Hey, how you doing? I would say I'm doing great, but I'm not. I'm unhappy again. All right, look. It's more issues with the van. As you guys may recall, it hasn't even been a year yet. I had this work done in August of last year. I went to a joint called Hooper's Rear Ends to have new gearing put in and a posi traction rear end. And if you recall, I'll try to remember to go back and put links to the videos where I discovered all the things that were wrong from what they did, everything they touched, as I was posting them from, again, not quite a year ago, but close. And so you guys understand. Those of you who've been here for the Astro van content have been following along, and so you know, this is like going to Journeys, right? When I had that work done, and they let me go away from there in an unsafe situation, and there was a whole bunch of problems with that, which I've documented as well. And what aggravates me the most is I do most of my own work. The only time I have a problem, usually, and what irks me the most is when things don't go well that I'm paying someone else to do. That's what aggravates me the most. So I was having this noise when I go. I have a driveway. You guys have seen it. There's a ramp. There's probably a grade difference of 6 or 7 feet from the road to where you go up this ramp, and then you get on my driveway and you drive behind the building. When I go down that every morning for, I don't know, man, maybe a month or so now, when I go down it, I hear a squeal, like a brake squeal. And I brought it over to Irvin at SMG, and I love those guys. This is the only shop I've found that's always, I mean, there's other shops that are honest, but with these guys, they're not just honest. They're really fair, but I can believe what they tell me, and there's never any drama. There's never, oh, man, it's going to be a thing, blah, blah, blah. It's just, no, here's the thing, matter of fact, it's great, love them. So I brought it to them because I thought it was a brake thing. It sounded like a brake-related issue because when I hit the brakes, it would go away. They pulled my wheels, they couldn't find it. And then in the last few days, I had the same issue. After that, always is fine, but over the last 3 days, like starting about 3 days ago, I would get this intermittent sound like the rotor's rubbing against something. And if I cut the wheel to the left, or if I went to the left and went right away, I would make that sound occur. And because the van is lifted, the sound bounces around. I kept thinking it had something to do with the front. They put new brakes on, rotors and pads on the rear before I left for the last trip when I went out to the Saline Valley and met up at Wonder Hussey and all that. So they would have noticed this at that time. So this hasn't been going on very long. Anyhow, they sent me a video back yesterday, which I'll try to remember to include here in this video at the end after I'm done talking, of where they're moving the wheels and the axles are sliding out of the rear differential a lot more than it should. And when I left their place yesterday, I actually turned a corner and I could feel like a gear thing happening for a moment until I got straight, and then it went away. It's not safe to drive. They told me it's not safe to drive. I should be towing it if I go anywhere. Or if I bring it anywhere. And I'm trying to find a place to go to because I can't do Hooper's. I called Hooper's. Here's the receipt, which I'll show you. This is when I had the work done. So I called the guy up. I started telling him what the issue was. And I actually had a list of things that had gone wrong while they were doing the work. Which I wasn't like, hey, MFer, and blah, 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 blah. I was like, hey, just, if you recall, this happened, that happened. He goes, well, I don't remember that. That's not on the receipt. And, he's denying it. I don't know how many 4x4 Astro vans come in that they've done this gear work to where he can't remember this, but they do a lot of work there. I don't expect them to remember me. And he's got a shtick, this dude. He's very calm, because he's got to deal with crazy people all the time. And whenever you remain calm, you're the one who always seems like you're more kind of in the right. It's the right thing to do. But he has this passive-aggressive way of telling you to go screw yourself. I kind of admire it. So I told him, he goes, well, if you're not happy with our work, why do you want to come back to us? That's his initial response. And my retort to that was, because I spent thousands of dollars on this, man. And then he says to me, well, before you call me back, read the fine print, which is a passive-aggressive way of telling you to screw off. So at that point, I realized I can't go back to these guys anyhow. But here's their original receipt with me. You might be able to screenshot that and actually read the fine print there. But it does say on here, it's interesting, Hooper's differential assemblies are guaranteed for satisfactory operation against defective workmanship and materials for 90 days without mileage limitation. Well, it's been over 90 days. Under no circumstances will we recognize claims for consequential damage or accept liability for parts damaged through improper installation, which would have been them because they installed it, abuse or undue strain, such as but not limited to the following examples: oversized tires, wheel spacers, exceeding gross vehicle weight, or any type of racing. So just to be, accurate here, when I brought it in, it already had the size tires on it that are still on it, which are oversized compared to standard. No guarantee on any posi traction type device or posi chatter due to rear tires of unequal circumference. I guess that would be like if you had a spare tire you put on, you had a flat and you ran that, so that would make sense. Guarantee is limited to replacement of defective unit or part only when available after inspection at our facility. No refund on special orders. Deposits void after 30 days. 20% restocking fee on returned merchandise. No warranty on customer provided parts. Customer add oil to rear end. So I guess people put too much oil in the rear end. Initial inspection charge is $50 plus oil. Apply if vehicles lifted by Hooper's employees or if after inspection repairs are not performed by Hooper's. All vehicle left after 48 hours of notification will be charged $50 per day for a storage fee. And so, yeah. This cost me $3,000. Now, when I talked to them on the phone originally, it was going to be $5,000. So the fact that it was only $3,000, I don't know if that means I gave them $2,000. I don't think I did. I think I might have been taking this $3,000 and then adding the rest of the money I spent on stuff that happened because of what they did. But just so you guys understand the order of how this went down, and I've got the videos to back it up, because I'm an honest guy. I dropped it off over there. Everything was cool. They talked me into the 410 gears. Originally, I wanted to get the 373, I think it is, but he said the 410s would be smarter. And my posi traction is by Duragrip, 28 spline, 7 5/8 rear. There, it's $500 for that unit. So brought it in. We talked about all this stuff, and they did it. I got a phone call from them right away, telling me that they had cross-thread the front passenger, it's not the sway bar links, the idler arm, which bummed me out because those were new, they were in great shape, and I actually took the time to paint them before I put them in, but okay, they replaced it, they didn't charge me for that. So I went back, I picked up the van when it was done, which, by the way, is a lot of back and forth. Like, I walked through Hollywood, I got on the train, I took it to the valley, I took buses to get there, and then I had to walk quite a ways to get to the place. So I get there, I pick up the van, I go home, I do an undercarriage inspection. The whole entire chassis of my van is covered in oil. It's actually coming from 2 places. So I call him up. He's like, well, bring it back in. All right, so I got to bring it back over there, and it's leaking from the front differential on the driver's side where the CV input shaft goes in, but it's also leaking from the transfer case, which they ignored. That's throwing that red oil. And the interesting thing about that is that it never leaked before. I mean, other than when it leaked when I first got it from, when Journeys put it in, it leaked. But that leaked from where the 2 parts are put together where there wasn't enough gasket seal. This was leaking, that was spitting from where the yoke goes in. So something happened when they took it apart and they put it back together where now the yoke had been pulled out too far or pushed in too far where there had been some rust on it, and that rust was creating a knot seal, and so it was spinning that way. Either way, it wasn't leaking before I brought it to them at that spot. As far as the front differential goes, they pulled it out for me and they showed me the input shaft was worn. It should have never been put back in. I should have gotten a phone call at that time with them telling me, hey, your CV input shaft is bad, we need new CV axle. I would have said, hey, fine, man, I'll tell you what, let's buy 2 new ones, and we'll just put 2 new ones in right now. They didn't even give me that option. I had to go home for this. They had to figure this out. And so they called me up, they said, we found one, we put it in, it's working. So now I go through the whole process of getting over there again to pick up the van again. So I pick it up, I drive it, and I'm still having the issue with the fluid come out of the transfer case. So I decided to find a drive shaft place. I go to this guy Sergio, Drive Shaft Pros. This guy on point. You guys saw the video. Super cool dude. Did it for me right there. Made me a completely new drive shaft. Got it in. The only thing where we made a mistake was we made it long enough to where the yoke went in further, and he had taken some emery and sanded off the rust to put that in. And what that did was it made it so it wasn't as nice of a seal. So even though it wasn't leaking at that point, it eventually did start weeping again on me. That's not a bad on Sergio. That's just how that worked out. And I eventually took care of that down at Temecula transmission and differential because I was on my way to Arizona. It's a whole other long story, and you guys, those videos are there. You can see that. Back to the Hoopers fiasco. So on my way back from the new drive shaft, my front end was really vibrating bad. So I got it up underneath there, and I grabbed the drive shaft they put in, which is rusted and old, by the way. It wasn't a new drive. They didn't put a new drive shaft in. They just picked something up that they had in the yard. And I grab it. It's got a lot of excessive play. So I get two new drive. I actually had two CVs brand new in the box that somebody else gave to me. You guys may remember this CV fiasco. So as I'm doing it, I realize I learned that the axle nuts are loose and the lug nuts are all loose. And that's a crazy thing. At one point I came back from them. I think I noticed that earlier before I had them put the new CV in. And when I got it back this time and I went to go do things, I actually took my torque wrench and I show how I set the correct torque setting for the axle nut, and I got a whole revolution and a half before I hit the proper torque setting. So the axle nuts were not torqued down to spec. And like I said, the lug nuts were very loose. Like they were on, the wheels weren't wobbling, but when I went to crack them free, they just spun right off. And I think you even see me doing that in the video. So I replaced my CVs myself. And now I got to bring it back to them eventually to change the break-in fluid. And I had bought an aftermarket rear diff cover for it, which I talked to them extensively about on the phone. They were totally cool with it. So I bring it back, and they've changed the rear diff fluid. I'm hoping they did that. We discover later they probably didn't do the front diff fluid, because just before I left on this last trip here, I drained it, and I've drained the front diff before and the rear diff, not just on this vehicle, but many others, and that fluid that came out of there was, you've seen it in the video, it's black and mucky and in horrible condition. And this was a diff that was just rebuilt, and supposedly the break-in fluid had been replaced. It should not have looked like that, in my opinion. What do I know? So I drop it off to do that, and I had to bring it back again because it was leaking from the rear diff. So something else had happened. But when I picked it up from them, they didn't put the bracket back on to hold the metal lines for the brake, because they said, oh, rear diff cover, we can't do that. Well, all it would have required is a longer bolt. I actually found a longer bolt for the other part because it had backed out, and I found one in my shop and I replaced that one. But they never gave me back the bracket. I didn't get that. If I had my bracket, I could have repaired that myself. And then as I was driving the truck over the last several months, other issues came up that was due to them. For instance, I was having this clanking in the front end. I looked underneath, I couldn't understand, I was grabbing stuff, and it got worse. And I looked under it again like a week later, and I realized the front idler arm that they replaced, because they broke the first one, both the bolts had backed out. I lost one of them, and the other one was barely had a thread on it, and that idler arm was hanging pretty bad. So I found a couple bolts I had because I saved fasteners, and I put that in with the impact driver, and that thing's nice and tight now, no problem. But again, I'm fixing an issue that they created. And then I went underneath the van another time, and I looked at the rear, and there's oil dripping from the rear diff cover. I go in there, and the bolts I could twist them with my fingers, all of them. So I have to go in there, and again, you see this on video because I show it to you. So I had to tighten up all of the nuts on the rear diff cover. Now, I didn't call them and complain every time I had one of these issues. I just dealt with it. Even the CVs that I replaced and put in, both of them ended up with a tear in the boot, like right away, throwing grease. So I went to Rock Auto and I bought another set of CVs and put them in, and you guys might have watched that video. It took me 2 hours, replaced both my front CVs, no problems. Actually, there was a problem. I stripped a bolt for one of the calipers, so at that time, and that might have happened when I put the first set of CVs in that had the leaky boot. At one of those videos, you see it. Fortunately, I had new rotors and calipers and pads and everything up here on the shelf, all AC Delco, so I replaced all the front brakes at the same time. So I'm just saying, don't go to Hooper's rear ends. I mean, I didn't want to have to throw them under the bus like this, but after that phone call, his response should have been, I'm kind of shocked he didn't remember me, but fine. I'm not all that memorable, I suppose, and that's okay. That's not an ego hit for me. But his response should have been, okay, I hear what you're saying. I want to make this right. Your axles should not be coming out of your rear differential. That's something we need to look at and address and get that right for you. That should have been his response. Not, well, make sure you read the small print before you call me back. You know, or why do you want to come back if you're not happy with our work? Douchebag. That's a total douchebag response. And there's another guy that's in there with him too, and he's a big dude. And I like these guys because they have that man attitude like I have. The problem with that man attitude is that wants to get you to the point where I come from, it's like, well, let's go out in the parking lot and settle this. You know what I mean? Like, that's where my mind goes. That's why I'm always really calm about stuff, because I don't want to lose my cool. And I can tell that's what he's doing too. So I don't need to go there. The bummer is that finding a reputable joint to do the rear end it's hard. It's hard to find. I found a place that's pretty close. It's in Compton. I called him this morning. His Yelp reviews are horrible. I'm hoping that he's cool. I asked him if I was to tow it over there, if I could be there when they pull the cover to inspect it. But I think what I'm going to probably do, I could pull the cover and I could show you. I could put that on video. Problem is, I don't know what I'm looking at. My buddy Dave, you guys know Dave, he's awesome. He's got a mechanic that came out. He recently did his rear end. He did not put posi in it. He replaced it with the factory stuff. But after he replaced it, he had a mobile mechanic that's a friend of his. He's out in the valley, so he may not come here. I'll make it worth his while. I'll pay him the money. I'll give him $100 at least just to come and look. So, because if I have a pro look at it for me, we can pull the cover, we can put it on video, we can spy exactly what the issue is. Then I could call back the other place and say, I already know what the issue is. I had a guy look at it. Here's the video. Check it out. And then get a price on that. And if it's relatively affordable to fix it, I'm hoping that the gearing's okay. I'm hoping that the posi traction is still okay. If I have to replace the posi traction unit, that's at least $500. Now, I've seen it for sale in other places, so I'll maybe get that part if their number is crazy. But if it's affordable for me, I may spring for chromoly axles, which we would have to set up an appointment. They'd have to order those parts, get them in, and all that. I believe those axles are over $300 a pop. And then there's always the possibility of going down to Sergio down at Drive Shaft Pros. I talked to him yesterday. He's the kind of guy who'll spend the time with you on the phone. And then towards the end, he's got to get off. And I always feel guilty about dominating too much of his time on the phone because I know he's busy. I've been there. I know what that place is like. I'd rather go there. I called my insurance. I have USAA, and I made sure that I had the towing. And so towing is good for 50 miles. So we'll figure all that out, and I have to flatbed it, to be on the safe side. So, again, this stinks. I don't have a van right now. Fortunately, I'm in a spot where I have a lot of milling and work to do here at the shop, and I can ride the bicycle here. It's just under 3 miles to where I live. So I ride here in the morning. I ride home for lunch. I ride back. I ride home again. I'm getting at least 10 miles a day and more than that on the bicycle and pedaling hard. So that's good because I've been porking up again. I got to cut some weight. That is it for now. Don't go to Hooper's Rear Ends. I'm just telling you. I will talk crap about them now every time this subject comes up in a video because they could have made it right, and even from the beginning. Just the stuff I'm telling you that I discovered that you'll see if you go back and look at these videos where things aren't tight. Everything is dangerous. The CV axle, the one they put in being horrible, and I actually still have it. I kept it. It's on a shelf over here. I can show you how bad it is compared to how a good one works. And I show you that in the videos. Here's what I took out. Look at this. Here's a new one. Look at that. You see the difference. So I actually kept the parts so I could prove it. I think I even kept the idler arm that they cross-thread. Not that that matters. But you could see, if I go underneath the van, you can see the painted one on the driver's side, and you can see the unpainted one on the passenger side with the new bolts I put in that don't match the factory bolts. But again, I have video confirmation, proof of everything I discovered as I discovered it. The rear differential cover, all those bolts backing out and the thing leaking, that's ridiculous. Between the CV and the idler arm, those could have been if I didn't catch that, even what I caught now with the axles, just by listening with my ear, understand there's something wrong, bring it in, having somebody who knows more than I do look at it to point out to me that these axles are doing this, holy crap, that's serious. If I didn't have my spidey senses go, and here's the really screwed up thing. In my mind, I've been telling myself, I got to pull the rear cover. I have to inspect that. Even though I wouldn't know what I'm looking at, I was thinking, like, I got to do that. And the reason I guess I didn't do it was because I wouldn't know what I was looking at. I need somebody with me to do that. But just because I didn't trust their work, because so many other things were wrong. If all these other things were wrong, how can I assume that the gearing job was done correct? And when I talked to Sergio on the phone yesterday, he was talking to me about C-clips and using like an O-ring to shim it or get a bigger C-clip. And then the guys over at Irvin's, over at SMG, they were telling me, Johnny's a great dude. They're all certified mechanics over there. It's not like there's one guy that's a certified mechanic that owns a joint and everybody else works for him and they're not certified. They're all certified mechanics. They all went to school for this. So he was explaining to me that he doesn't even think Pozzi is smart in that rear end. He thinks it's too small for it. And he doesn't agree with these modifications and upgrades. But that's because he's a top-notch mechanic who believes things should be done factory all the time. I've heavily modified this van, as you guys know. That's why a lot of you are here. So this is where I'm at now. This is going to cost me money and time that I don't have right now. I'm doing a project now, and then there's another one right after for the same client that was going to help to get me a little bit ahead. But I can't get ahead if I'm losing time and money due to shoddy workmanship by this operation. You know what I'm saying? This is totally screwed up. And I don't know what else to do. What am I going to do? Sue them? That's not going to happen. So screw those guys. I'm just throwing them under the bus. And now you know. If you're in Los Angeles and you know of a gearing shop, especially if you know somebody personally, and you want to show them this video, I would appreciate it. I just want to be able to like look at it with you and talk to you and make a video of it to document what went wrong. Right? So that's explained in my next video on this particular subject. Just so again, I have a record of all of this that I can, they can see it eventually. It's on YouTube. It's going to live out here for a long time. So anyhow, I also need help on something else. I'm not big on asking for help, but I could use somebody, especially if you're in the LA area, because I need somebody to hold my hand who's also a YouTube content creator. Because I am monetized, but I've got 2 Google accounts somehow, so they're not actually paying me, and they're holding all my money in an account, and there's a substantial amount of money sitting there that I need to get. So I need to figure that out. So let me know. And I'll tell you, I don't have luck on this. I had a guy pop into my life a year or so ago that has an Astro van, and he's a computer guy, and he offered to help me with my computer because the lid was breaking. So he came over and he fixed it, and he got my computer running right, and he was so cool. I helped him out with his van, gave him a bunch of advice. I gave him my other set of wheels and tires, which were like new, five wheels, 5 tires. It was $1,200 at least for the tires, and he was supposed to take a couple of my iPods and rebuild them. And I finally, after badgering him, got him to mail me the stuff he took, and he fixed one of them, but it's got his name on it, and I can't upload any music to it. And the other one wasn't done, and that was another, waste of my time. This is what happens when I need somebody else. If you want something done right, do it yourself. That's the bottom line. It's like you got to learn you got to take the time to learn how to do everything on your own to make sure it gets done right. That's terrible, man. Fuck. Jesus. What the hell is going on? You can't count on anybody or trust anybody. It's, puts you in this situation. And I know what that feels like when I go into new clients' homes and they were screwed over by the last carpenter that came in. So they're like wondering about me. I got to make them feel comfortable, and I have to come off trustworthy and show them my stuff. And, and then once you do a great job for somebody and you're reliable and you're trustworthy, and I got keys to houses all over this place. You do quality work and you're honest with them and they pick up on all this, then they want to keep you busy forever. They never want to let you go. That's what usually happens with me. My whole career out here, I've locked into certain clients that kept me busy for years to the point where there's nothing left to do. And you got to wait 15 years or so until the work you did starts aging a bit. Now it needs to be tuned up or changed. So I find myself going back 15 or even 20 years later in some cases going, oh, that held up pretty good. Yeah, of course. that's going to rot now, of course. So you have these issues there, but it's awesome to reconnect with people that you did work for that long ago. It's crazy. I don't know, man. I always try to do my best. I try to right my wrongs. I'm not perfect. So when other people are screwing up, it really aggravates me. Anyhow, thanks for being here. Have a great day. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Be good to one another.
Dale.